This is a good one. Wow, you know, I felt this fish just the slightest touch, and this fish was on. I mean, this is a nice sized trout here. So he's gonna run me out. He's a strong rainbow. Ooh, look at him go. Get some line in. I'm just gonna work him down here. He's just laying in there, heading the current. There he is. Big strong fish. Let's see if he wants to run up. It's nice to have a lot of room on the shore of this desert river. I can just walk along the grass here. Not even get, well, it looks like a nice brown trout. Took him on a, looks like I got him on a caddis larva. There he is. Yes, yeah, I got him on a caddis larva. You can see I got a nick in my hand there, and I have to use the forceps to get him out. There he goes. He didn't like that. Let's see if I can whisper him. There he is. Probably looks like a good 12 or 13 inch brown trout. He's a beauty.
Drop shot nymphing, changing flies. When do I change flies? How do I change flies? What flies do I need? What are the best flies to use? Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mike at Northwest School of Fly Fishing, the old fish hobo. And one of the biggest questions I get often in fly fishing or nymph fishing in general is when do I change flies, or what fly should I change to? And it's just endless, the sheer amount of nymph patterns out there. And it goes from the greatest, I see it on YouTube, I see it online. This is the greatest nymph ever. The Paragon is the greatest thing God ever created in nymphing flies, and this fly does this, and this fly does that, and these are the great ones, and you got to use these. And you go and you tie them up, and you search the internet, and you buy some, or go to the fly shop and see what they got. You might even get that from some of the guys working in the fly shop. But I'm here to say straight, when it comes to nymphing, It's a whole different ballgame down subsurface. It's not like dry fly fishing. There's two types of fishing. There's dry fly fishing and nymph fishing. If you want to curl one out there, there's streamer fishing. But streamer fishing is not a feeding behavior, and what causes a trout to take a dry fly is not what causes a trout to take a nymph. What causes a trout to take a nymph is a learned or conditioned behavior. They've learned from a sprig out of an egg that whatever comes in the target zone can be food. So if a trout's hungry and that target zone is defined by that waggle they're making, it can be very slight. I've seen trout with waggles, all over the place. But typically, you're going to get this type of waggle. It's going to be an up and down, side to side. Trout have learned since they're a sprig out of an egg that food will come to them if they're hungry. So trout don't move around a lot in the day. They stay in one spot all day, in one spot. They might move around from time to time, but they're generally speaking right in one spot. So we want to really look at the science of this. Trout have learned that when they're hungry, anything coming down within their target area can be food. A piece of plastic, a piece of bark, a piece of grass, a real nymph, a fake nymph. Okay, science doesn't say anything about what type of nymph that is. It's just saying that if it's hungry, put it in their target zone. So furthermore, we can look at the science and we can say that trout are either hungry or they're not hungry on the bottom. We can say that trout will either eat our nymph or not eat our nymph. So the science really doesn't say anything other than that. It's all different upstairs on the surface. You need this kind of size, color, impression, this color, that color. You get off a certain color, a certain size, and it's all over for you. No, not on the bottom. That does not apply to the bottom. So we're really talking about changing flies and what should I go for. And if you haven't watched any of my videos by now, if you don't know me, I'm really a guy that's involved in the science, the physics, and the logic of fly fishing, and how this applies to the concepts and principles in fly fishing. So the question is, when do I change flies? Well, that's pretty important because I change nymphs all the time. But when we step back and we really take a look at flies from a scientific standpoint, during our first season, which is summer, you can say mid-spring to late fall, that would be the season one. Season two would be winter. Okay, so we're really talking about during this season here. We can say comfortably that 95 to 98% of what a trout eats during this season, and even in winter, are aquatic insects. So during this season, 45+%, according to some of the studies out there, up to 45% of what a trout eats are going to be mayflies in their adult and winged form. And 45% of what a trout is going to eat during the season, will be caddisflies in their adult and larval form. That other 10%, 10 to 15%, will be stoneflies. And a few midges in there. Depending on, all rivers are different. Rivers are like women, they're all different. Or rivers are like men, we're all different. And it applies, these things apply differently to other rivers, but we're really looking at it from a general scientific standpoint, something to give you a baseline. So in essence, if that's true, and I believe it to be true in my 60 years of fly fishing, if that is true, then wouldn't logic dictate that you be fishing, say, 2 flies or 2 nymphs? One would be a mayfly imitation nymph, and one would be a caddis larva imitation nymph of different sizes and variants. That in itself, if you do the math and do the equation, you're presenting in the target zone 90% of what a trout eats during the season. If that trout's hungry, it should take those 2 flies, or any fly, far as that goes, into its target area. It's going to eat it. So changing flies really applies to if you do it right and you're presenting your fly in the target, your nymphs or flies in the target zone. If that trout's hungry, then you stand an extraordinarily good chance of catching that fish, regardless of the nymph, according to the science. piece of grass, remember? So changing flies can be such that I will start off on a river where my lower fly, or my first fly, in your case, however you nymph, would be a mayfly, and my second fly would be a caddisfly larva, and I'm going to work that. Of any pattern, I'm going to work that and work that. My first strategy change might be to reverse that, meaning one of those flies may be out of the target zone, and I'll reverse that, and I'll work that, and I'll work that, and I'll work that. Now, changing flies becomes something that, when do I do that? Typically, I like to, when I do change flies, if that strategy is not working, I like to do something a little off kilter a little bit, like a San Juan worm, or an egg ball, or a purple pheasant tail nymph, or a purple prince nymph, or a orange or red copper john, something in color. Because color can take and turn a feeding behavior into an aggressive, impulsive strike, very similar to streamer fishing. Now, if I'm on a river, okay, where there are stoneflies in that river, this is where it really helps you to really do some research on where you're fishing. If I'm on a river that has stoneflies in it, my primary nymph is going to be, opening strategy, my primary nymph is going to be a stonefly. My second fly will be either a caddis or a mayfly nymph. And again, my second changing of flies, I'll reverse, or I'll add the opposite of what I had on in terms of caddisfly or mayfly, and then maybe change to a different stonefly pattern. And the science behind all this, and the reason for all this, is stonefly nymphs do not emerge on the surface. They crawl out of the river. And we have stonefly hatches, depending on the river, all summer long, starting probably in late June all the way into September. And they must merge or migrate outside the river. When that's not happening, they're stationary. They're just living on the bottom. They're not moving through the river. But when they all start, when hundreds of thousands start moving to shore, they're gathering there, here's the catch. Stoneflies have a very difficult time swimming. They tend to tumble when they lose grip. And they will tumble down the river, okay, until the river itself lets it settle on the bottom. And then it will continue its migration. So what we know for a fact that trout do have the ability to learn. They're not very smart in terms of what they can do, rest, spawn, feed, and be safe, and they can only do one of those things at any one time, meaning they can't feed and spawn. But what we do know for a fact, and if that's it, if they can only do those four things, you can say they're not very bright, they're stupid. But the fact that trout can learn, like Pavlov's dogs, can learn, makes them not that way, makes them can be pretty smart. Now, each river is different. The trout in that river have different environments. They learn different things. So what I'm trying to say to you with the stonefly, they have learned that tumbling down the river is a big meal, and they will just take it. If I'm on a river that has limited or no stoneflies, and I'm not even going to do that because it's illogical for me to do so. So changing flies is, like most things in fly fishing, it's a cerebral thing. Most of us have our favorite nymph. Certainly use that. I have some favorites that I like to use. That's not the question. The question is not whether or not the Paragon is a really great Euro nymphing fly. That's not the question. The question is when do I change flies? The question is, are you putting that in the target zone? The number one reason why we fail in nymphing, and drop shot nymphing in particular, is because our nymphs are not in the target zone. It doesn't matter what you're using down there. If you're not in the target zone, you will not catch any fish. So before I start changing flies, I want to make sure, step one, is that I get my nymphs in the target zone. Step two is I want to match what the fish may be feeding on in that river, and science dictates that it's either a mayfly or a caddisfly larva and nymph. Each river is different. That may be different in another river. It could be something else. Then I want to know if it has stoneflies in it, and I'll change flies according to that. Then I'll change flies, if I'm struggling, I'll change flies to color. Why? Trout seed color are different than humans underwater. They have one more cone and one more rod in their eyes, and what looks red to you looks bright red to them. What looks green to you looks neon green to them. It all depends on the depth of the river and the color of the river, because that in turn with UV creates almost like a polarized vision. So they have a different vision than we do underwater. So oftentimes I can get a trout to take my nymphs just by changing color or putting on a color. They might not be hungry, I can change a color. And so there's specific things you should be thinking about when you're changing these nymphs, or you want to change nymphs. I mean, how often should I change my nymphs? Well, that depends on you, depends on a lot of things, and that's really a subjective question. It's different for everybody. But for me, I'm a fast fly fisherman. I'm not in a spot very long. I'm not one of these guys that are going to sit on a spot for an hour, let alone all day. I'm moving, I'm shaking, I'm driving. Economy time dictates that you spend all your time fishing the most productive sections of the river, and I'm on that thing. I might be down that river for 15, 20 minutes. I haven't got a single hit, and I've worked that river, the depths. I've read it, I've looked at it, I'm moving, chucking and shaking, nothing. Man, I'm packing my bags and leaving. Or I'm going to change flies and do it. So there's not a real science to changing flies. It's more a comfortable time. For you or for the next angler, having the same nymphs on for half an hour before you change flies, that's perfect. That's a strategy, and that's really what we're really talking about, is a cerebral strategy to what you're doing. When it comes to nymphing, remember, it's a learned behavior. Get your flies in the target zone. Don't be afraid to change flies, and think about how a trout thinks about and what it eats. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you on the river.